Hello, you guys, and welcome back to Cerebral Palsy and Fitness Podcast. And believe it or not, today we're doing something different. I have a returning guest, Graciela Moore. She's actually back on in 2021, and she, as to kind of remind you guys what we talked about at the beginning, we talked about spirituality, coaching, and a whole lot more. And today we're going to do an update. So welcome, Graciela.
Hi, David. I'm so happy to check in with you. It's been so long. It's really not enough to just like a post or comment here and there. It's wonderful to see you again.
Yeah, it really is. And I know you've been through a lot the last 12 months. I noticed that you published a brand new book, right? Just recently. Could you tell us a little bit about that book?
Oh, sure. Yes. So the most recent one would be the poetry book. Let me get it. I have it right here. So Love Spells, Musings for the Brokenhearted is my first collection of poetry out there. But last year, just in time for Cyber Monday, I released the Moon Magic and Mindfulness 2023 Manifestation Agenda slash journal.
That is a really big journal.
Talk about a subtitle. And so this is a year's worth of
Wow.
mindful work. It has questions, it has space for you to time block your days. And then every full moon, you get to answer the questions and journal. And then I like to paint over it. The instructions is to paint over it. And this is a practice that I've been enjoying since I was about 21, 22, 23, pretty much where I kind of had my own very first faith churchy crisis, if you will. And so I started investigating and connecting and doing more of the horoscope typey stuff. And the moon has always been very present for me. The moon has always been a thing, right? I think it's very empath of me to have that quote unquote relationship with the moon or the sun or the zodiac. And so when I became a coach, that was actually one of the first offerings that I started putting out there, which was getting together for the new moon and the full moon, the same way I would do it privately. And then people would come and I would guide them through the process of this is what the context of this full moon or new moon is. It's in Gemini or it's in Sagittarius or whatever, right? And so the questions, according to what I would be inspired to ask, right? Coaching is all about asking the right questions. And so I'm very interested in investigating and asking all of it. And then we would paint together, have that activity together, and then we would do a meditation. And so I did that privately and for pay for many months until I decided to launch the show, which is like video, but you can also listen to it as a podcast. And then a few weeks after I released the show, no longer for pay, anybody can listen to the podcast. Anybody can come and share with the live show and see me and interact, right? I wake up one morning and look at my husband and I say, so I just dreamt that I had this book in my hand. And in the dream, I'm sitting down looking at my hands and there's the book. And it's something about the moon and it was black. And I have no idea what that was, but I really feel like I'm supposed to figure out what it is. This is me like at the crack of dawn talking to my husband who's looking at me like, what? We just woke up. What are you talking about? And so it took me about 2 or 3 weeks of prayer and meditation. You and I have talked a lot about that, about how a lot of the decisions in my life are taken after a lot of prayer and meditation. And so figured it out, spirit delivered, and I got answered the question, which was, what is this book about? And so I put it together and here it is.
How long
Yay.
did it take you to actually, I guess, write it all out, plan it all out, and get it published?
I would say about 3 months of just all of the research, all of my own, interpretational downloads. I looked at my old journals from old horoscopes and pretty much dug up. I'm not an astrologer. I just love the moon, right? And so in my show, we don't discuss astrology because I don't discuss that. That's not my line of work, right? So in the show, we will quote other astrologers, other amazing astrologers like Jessica Laniato from Ghost of a Podcast or Chani Nicholas from the Chani app. I'll quote both of them as my favorites, right? And then what I do love and what I do have a pattern in years doing is where is the moon today and what does that mean for me? So today, for example, the moon is in Cancer. So what does that mean for me if tomorrow is in Taurus or the next day it's in Gemini? And that's what we talk about in the book.
You
And
know,
I
that's
mean,
that.
in the show, which is the book.
You know, that is a great question. How can you tell where the moon is on a? You mentioned how the moon could be one day could be Taurus, and next day it could be Cancer. How can you tell
Well,
that? Like,
the thing is that the zodiac goes in order, right? So with the spring solstice, it's Aries season, and after Aries, all of the signs from 1 through 12, they're in an order. And
okay,
so the sun takes 30 to 32 days in each sign. The moon, which moves faster because it's around the earth, the moon only takes 2 to 3 days, and then it goes to the next sign. And once it goes to number 12, it goes back to Aries, and then Taurus,
okay,
Gemini, Cancer. It goes in order. And
interesting.
so there's resources out there. Obviously, like I no longer have to be like, where's the calendar and let me count. Like all of this information is out there now. Like the Farmer's Almanac. There's a Moon Farmer's Almanac that I totally love and recommend. It'll tell you things like, in this moon, you should cut your hair if you want it to grow. In this moon, you should cut your hair if you want it to kind of take a little longer and just be short for a while. Silly things like that. Because in the end, the farmers do follow the sun and the moon, and that's really how they handle the crops throughout the year. So,
That is a really interesting perspective on how to look at everything. Um, I would have never thought of looking at I guess things like that on a daily basis. So that's very interesting to know, to really find out. So I have to
yeah.
definitely look more into it. That's pretty cool.
Mm. Yeah, so it's been wonderful. Well, I won't assume that you know, and I'll ask you. Did you know that the names of the week correspond to planetary um identities?
I had no idea.
So Monday is Moon Day.
No way. That is so
That's right.
cool.
Tuesday in Spanish is martes because Tuesday is for Mars.
Oh
Mars.
yeah.
Wednesday, miércoles, it's for Mercury. So the planet rules the day. That's what it's called. Thursday, it's Thor's day. And it corresponds to Jupiter, the giant, the extravagant. And then Friday, Viernes, is Venus Day. And then Saturday, which one is that?
Saturn.
Yes,
Okay.
Saturn Day. And then Sunday is what?
The
The
sun.
sun. The sun. That's right. And so astrology has been around forever and it will remain. And it is one of the most fascinating things I've ever, dug a hole and gone under. And so it was beautiful to kind of receive this calling or inspiration or prompting to share something so personal and to open it up for the collective. And so every Monday we gather together. So that's the thing. The agenda every moon day, you have the opportunity to check on specific things. It has an affirmation, and then you journal openly But then the rest of the week, it's for you to time block. So Tuesday through Sunday, it's for you to just get your life in order and just remain productive. So it also emphasizes the moon day of the week because that's what the agenda is. Excuse me. So every Monday, live, because it's a live podcast, which I think you wanted to talk about as well, the social audio aspect of what
Right.
I do, because it's different than podcasting, right? So every Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we get together live on Fireside, and people get to be on the stage with me, or they can send a message or interact, the same as a live on Instagram or on YouTube. And so we talk about all of this. And then every Monday we check in with each other. And it's been over a year since, no, we haven't been doing the show a year. It's going to be a year in August. 1 year anniversary. Yay.
Do you find it when it comes to doing, I guess, a live chat or on Fireside, do you find that the time sometimes do you think that time kind of brings out more of a crowd to when you do your events and your I guess your podcast? Because I for me it's the earlier I feel like there's a bigger crowd versus if it's later on, it's like less people are online. Do you ever face that situation?
Oh, I've had episodes where there's no one there. And I just say what I came to say. And I'm going to interact. And you see, I think this is something that musicians tend to really acknowledge or know early on. I grew up in a my father was a musician. We grew up on stage, and I've been a member of a band before as well. And I know what it's like to get somewhere to perform and to have an empty venue. That happens. You perform anyway, especially if you've already been paid or if you're getting paid to just be there. You
Right.
perform anyway, right? The band at a wedding, does the band at a wedding care that people are not paying attention? No, people are going to eat their cake, eat their food, talk, mingle, take pictures. They don't care about the band. And so if I show up to do my show and there's nobody there, I'm going to do it regardless. I'm going to pretend that there's someone there, and that someone is the listener to the replay, right? Because the show that I do on Fireside is the show that is on Spotify. Unedited, I just broadcast. Can I edit it? Yes. Do I want to keep it without editing it? Yes. So it goes to the podcast as if the person in Spotify was in the room. And it's also, I do it in that way because I want the person to be in the room. So if you're listening on Spotify, but you would like to be on the stage with me, then come to Fireside and show up to the live. All you have to do is download the app. It's free. So it's, yeah, I'll do it regardless of if there's anyone there. Now, that's the Monday show. If it was something like the conversations I tend to have on Twitter, the social audio spaces happening on Twitter, that's what they call it, spaces. And this is where the award ceremony last year surfaced, called the Global Interview, and I got nominated and all of that.
Oh yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. So if I were to open a space on Twitter and nobody showed up, I would probably close it. I wouldn't stay there and talk to myself, because Twitter, I like for it to be a conversation. Twitter is always a panel. I like for my spaces to be a panel of people sharing their insights. So there you go. Those are the two main things I do when it comes to social audio or podcasting.
And then for you, as far I know, you were, I think it was last year, you were named as a top mentor on Wisdom. How's that going for you? Are you still doing those?
Yes. So Wisdom launched, the Wisdom app launched October 7th of 2021. And I was a top mentor beta tester. So what that means is I was in the app before the app launched to the general public. It was a focus group of professionals. And I was a top mentor from the start because of my background in sales, marketing, and real estate, which is not what the world in social media knows, because I no longer do those things. But back then I still did. So that's what got me into the app. And the one thing that has persisted the most to this day is the book club. So the book club persists. We have read over 12 books. And out of those 12 books, I've gotten to interview about 6 of those authors. And it is just
That's
such
awesome.
yes, it is just so amazing to share someone's work with the collective. People get to come up because it's social audio. They get to come up to the mic to share questions, to share, can you repeat this? You read something that really resonated with me. Or they'll come up and be like, okay, what did you highlight, Graciela? And sometimes I highlight while I'm reading out loud, and other times I don't. But still, it's wonderful to share the perspective. And then when I get to really connect with the author and have them be, grateful and kind, they're not all, right? And just excited, then the collective gets excited because they get to speak firsthand with the author, and it's just so nice. So I'm grateful that that is still continuing. So we still have about 6 books in the queue for the rest of this year, so I better get on it.
Yeah, it's gonna take you quite a bit, but I'm sure with the your dedication and everybody's positivity and willingness to be there, to be able to listen and to interact with what you have to say in your teachings and your readings, it makes it a whole lot easier.
Mhm. Yes, well, that's the beauty of social audio, is that, for example, the book club, I would hope that everybody gets the book just because I want that for the author. But at the end of the day, the highlight of a book club in social audio is that the listener gets to read a book hands-free. Somebody is reading the book to them. And I've gotten amazing feedback from authors, and they love that, how I do it or whatever. They love the format. And most of the time it's also a cold reading. What that means is that I've never read the book before. We're going to sit down and go through it together for the first time. And that, again, live aspect, I feel just adds to the ingenuity of it all and to the authenticity of it all, because I'll make mistakes. I will be shocked as much as the audience sometimes with what I just read. I'll stop and be like, wait, we need to repeat that for emphasis. And so it's a live show. I think it's also very entertaining. And then, you know what? There's some other days that I just cannot read, and I make one mistake after the other, and it's like, wait a minute, is Mercury retrograde or what? Because I just cannot pronounce these words. It happens. Yeah, I just keep doing it.
Going back to what you talked about earlier about you being an empath,
Yeah.
what if you, since you and I are kind of talking right now, based off, my personality and the things that I do, what kind of person do you think I am?
Ooh, that's a loaded question, David. Okay. Well, I'll honor your curiosity and say that from where I stand and from what I have seen and from our interactions and from what we have discussed, one could argue that you are totally an empath, an empathetic person. Now, the
Okay.
question would be, are you a highly sensitive person? Because there's sensitive and then there's highly sensitive. And so
Okay.
that's kind of a spectrum. And that's a rabbit hole, right? So empathy, it's not just about really understanding where someone else is or putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Empathy is also feeling someone else's anxiety. Empathy is also, when we talk about I'm an empath or you're an empath, do you cry when other people cry because you feel their sorrow? When all of these world tragedies happen, it happens to me a lot when it has to do with women, like the women in I forget now, in Israel and Pakistan and all these things about their hair and
Right.
all these things like women's rights and in California, all these things related to women, I feel them. If I watch those news, I feel the weight of that collective angst on my shoulders. And it's an energetic, it's a mental thing. Let's just quote unquote, it's mental. But of course, we know better. And that's almost borderline offensive to say at this point, right? So it's an
Right.
energetic weight. And so, how can I get rid of this energetic weight on my shoulders so I can move on with my life? That's the type of empath life. Um, you may feel depressed when you literally have no reason to be depressed, and your brain is totally fine because you feel that collective angst. And it's a question of figuring out how to thrive and how to do life regardless, right?
Right. It's like with
That's part of
with social media, when for example, I have a friend that, she posts that she's really happy on social media and all these happy pictures, but when we have a conversation, she and I together, the true emotions come out. She tells me she's not happy. She feels a certain way because of her missing her family and her friends. And for me, as you know, we live in a society where if you're a male, and I don't know if you agree with me, but if you're a male, they don't want to see you show emotion, but I show emotion. I cry. I feel for people. I'm very sensitive towards people. I'm, very empathetic towards people.
right. There you go. So I was right.
Yeah, I do show emotion. So, and I'm not
Right.
ashamed of it. I really am not. I'm not.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's great that you feel so empowered because it's so natural. It's meant to just flow out. It is really just an energetic release that just needs to happen from something that caused it. And so you already went through whatever caused the emotion. Now just let it out and go on with your day. It becomes an issue when we swallow it, when we repress it, when we don't give ourselves the chance to speak it. And I'm saying speak it like, share with someone. The fact that your friend would call you to unload on you some very sincere perspectives about her life that she may not feel trusting enough with other people to share in social media proves that you are a highly sensitive empath, because people tend to turn to us for all sorts of caring, wholesome advice, or just caring, wholesome perspective. That's the empath in you magnetizing the person that you want to help and the person that you want to serve. And it can be very dangerous as well. Notice how I said that your empath is the one magnetizing, so make sure that you know what you want to attract, right?
Yep, it's one of those. It's like we were referring to earlier, how it's like with kids. They gravitate towards you know more of the negativity things. More of like what's going on. Fashion sense, social media, which is a huge thing. They see something on social media that's like, oh wow, this is awesome, but the adult in you, or the one that has common sense, sees it as, this is not a good idea, and you try to steer them away or gravitate them away from that particular situation.
Mhm. Yeah, children are very impressionable. And I think the goal for people like me and my work has to do with that new generation. So someone is mowing their lawn. I know you can break this out of your podcast, but I
And you,
just wanted to let you know.
hmm,
Yes, so to go back to that, children are very impressionable, and part of why people like me work with empathy and advocate for high sensitivity is because we want to defend our kids who are highly sensitive. And yet in 2023, there's no place for them. For example, even though highly sensitive people are 20 to 30% of the population, There's no one in the classroom that advocates for it. It's like ADHD, autistic spectrum disorder, and you're just loud and that's it. No, oh, you're dyslexic and that's it. No other category that needs the help or special treatment, because I feel like that's the most important thing about being highly sensitive is specific accommodations. Like, I'm talking a child that is highly sensitive may act out in the classroom because the lights, the fluorescent lights, are a sensitivity. And now this child cannot focus. Now this child wants to go home. This child doesn't even know what's wrong because they're not educated in that sense to say, you know, can you lower the lights? They're too bright. Like, a child is not there yet to speak of that awareness. And that's why I do the work that I do. So I work with adults who may not know anything about high sensitivity. More often than not, every single one of my clients ends up being a highly sensitive empath, and now it gives us a clear view of what we can get away with in terms of work. And then most of them inevitably have children who are highly sensitive, like my child. And so now it's a question of coaching the parent to learn how to advocate for their children's needs and to accommodate their own children so that they thrive and do better, because it can be so burdensome to be a highly sensitive in the world.
You said a key word there in the conversation: advocacy. Advocacy is so important, and given the fact that I did it for 2 years straight, and seeing what I've seen and what I experienced, it's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're on the front lines like I was. When you have to, let me give you an example. When you have to sit in an office, and basically advocate for one of your students because they're being targeted by association. You know, they did nothing wrong. They were just with the wrong crowd at the wrong time. And you have to sit there with them, and you have to explain to whoever is in charge of a certain department or program, hey, this student doesn't deserve this consequence because, and that's where I come in with, with documentation, evidence, past conversations I've had with the student. And I'm like, this student doesn't deserve this because I have A, B, and C, and I've known them for such and such amount of time, so why the consequence? And they're like, well, they were with those students at the time, at the moment. And I'm like, well, they've never had a consequence ever throughout the whole year. They've been out of trouble, and at the moment they were just there at the wrong time. They weren't doing anything wrong. Not only that, but after the class, they stayed and helped the teacher, clean up and do everything. So why keep the consequence? Why not be like, hey, you stayed and helped after. I'll just let you off with it with a warning. Just don't do it next time. Kids are kids, and if they're willing to learn after the fact, like right away, then obviously you're doing the right thing when you're being an advocate and being able to speak to the student and teaching them different techniques. Because then later on, they'll learn how to advocate for themselves or advocate for somebody else.
Yes, I think having someone advocate for you is a real vote of confidence. And we don't tend to see it that way when we are young. And hopefully, well, actually not hopefully, let's go with the other side, which is sadly, some of us may have grown in homes where we didn't know what advocacy was because nobody really advocated for us, right? I also deal a lot with the concept of domestic violence and bullying within the home, and just other things that tend to be a common thread between highly sensitive empaths, because we are such complicated, intricate personalities that people around us tend to brush us aside, as in, you're so weird, we have no clue how to be with you, you don't belong. And so there's a common thread of growing up in that toxicity for us, and how we are now doing it differently. That's another form of advocacy. If you are parenting your children 100% better, or at least trying to do that, than your family, or just breaking all those, toxic habits that sometimes go generations, right? You are advocating for your child. It's just a silent, action-based advocacy, and it's just beautiful to see it.
Yeah, it really is, especially after you put in the work and you see the results of them really just changing. I saw some minor changes in a few of my students, and one of the toughest things about finishing up this position was, you know, seeing the kids come up to me and tell me, thank you for teaching me what you taught me, and some of them didn't want me to go. I had a few that were trying to latch onto my leg or my arm, and they're like, we don't want you to go, and they're middle school kids, but I work with all boys. I had one that was like, no, Mr. David, don't tell me that. And they're like, don't say that you're leaving. And I'm like, I'm not leaving. I leave, but I always come back at some point. It's we oftentimes I tell them, hey, sometimes we leave for a better opportunity, but we don't forget those that have treated us right. And of course, being a mentor to these kids, we don't work with the school system directly. So with my job, it was my service to keep track of the kids 24/7. So it could be midnight and I could tell one of my kids, hey, if you ever need to talk to me about something, anything, if you want to call me at midnight, call me at midnight. I'll answer the phone. I'll talk to you. And some of the kids, believe it or not, they would call me at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and I'll wake up and I'll be like, hey, what's going on? And they'll tell me everything that goes on, even if it's just a minor thing, like, oh, I just want to talk to you. I just want to say hi.
Right.
I'm like, as long as I hear you and you're okay, that's what matters.
Correct. Yes. And that's really the true heart of an empath right there. I remember when I first graduated from my certification, and everybody kept telling me I needed to niche down. You need to find a niche. You need to focus on just one demographic or one group of people, figure it out. And my empath heart actually hurt, because I was like, I just want to help everybody. I just want everybody to be okay. Why do I need to niche down? If I talk to male boss, entrepreneur, 40-some-year-old guy, I'm sure I can help him. The same as if I talk to a housewife, whatever. And that was that empath really coming through, because we do deep down want everyone to feel loved and to be safe. And if you think about it, especially for those of us who come from very toxic upbringings, we want everybody to be safe and to feel loved, because that's what we wanted for ourselves forever. And it's great for those of us who have accomplished it. At the same time, there's so many out there who still haven't really figured out how to honor and love and trust themselves in the world, which is too loud, it's not us that are too loud, too fast, too dramatic. It's the world. The world is so fast, so dramatic, so loud, and we are soft. We're super soft. We're the softies of the world. And we want things to be beautiful, and we keep the culture alive, and we keep the arts alive, and we keep the music alive, because this is what being highly sensitive is. It's to gravitate towards those beautiful things. And it's tragic to strive for beauty in the toxic, but we do it anyway. We figure that out as well.
Do you find
We're
that
very
as,
powerful.
oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I
No,
was
I
going to
just wanted
ask
to
you.
finish that. Yeah, we're very powerful people.
So I wanted to ask you, do you find that sometimes to be a disadvantage or a limitation if you're too sensitive?
Absolutely. So the disadvantage, or what was the second one you said?
Or very limited. If you find yourself very limited,
Right. So the limitation comes from not knowing what exactly what makes you sensitive. If you don't know what makes you tick, if you don't know what your buttons are, know thyself, right? The limitation comes from not knowing this is a sensitivity, and this, if I work with it, I'll strengthen it, and now it becomes a strength. Now it becomes a tool. So an empowered individual knows how to target those things and use them, which is what I coach people to do. You're no longer overwhelmed and clueless. You're no longer literally surviving in survival mode. Now we are going to target, educate, figure out, strategize, and transform into a strength. And now you are empowered, and hopefully you learn to speak up for yourself, and you learn to self-advocate, and you learn to create and go for what you want. And that's the goal, right?
right, right. And for you, you mentioned how you've done a lot of these readings, your book through social media, your podcast. Is there any opportunity, later in time where you would like to do events in person, where you would like to speak in front of a group of people in person?
Oh, absolutely. I'm hoping to go to a convention in Miami later this year. Um, Also with the local community, I'll do those as well. It tends to be more about hope than anything else. And I could talk about hope all day. I remember you and I went extensively into hope in our
That's
first
right, we
conversation.
did.
Yes, and so hope is always a topic of discussion because it applies to every endeavor, right? Every team needs to hear about hope, every collective, I feel like. And so that's one of my favorite messages to kind of sprinkle around. And it's my dream still to publish the book about hope, and then to go into the book about being and growing up a highly sensitive. With the poetry and with the agenda, in all honesty, I created the agenda that I needed for myself. And the fact that the collective rallied around it and bought it, and that now I'm going to put another one for 2024, honestly, it just felt like a bonus blessing. I needed this agenda and I prepared it for myself. And then the book of poetry, it was just such a spiritual prompting. I have been writing since I was a teenager. I have a lot to unpack. And in all honesty, my second book of poetry was supposed to be released in April, and I couldn't finish it because I revisited kind of in a different format. And the format that I was prompted to revisit it with triggered a lot of old wounds. And so I'm still working through my second book of poetry because for every trigger, there's a new thing to look at. For every trigger, there's a new thing to kind of unpack. And so at this point, who knows when it'll be released? It's June and that was April. So, but when it comes out, I'll let you know.
Hey, that's awesome. Good things take time. Never
Exactly.
rush anything.
Exactly. Yes. And they're both available on Amazon. And I've sent some beautiful signed copies and dedication gifts to so many people. It's been so beautiful. And then literally already I'm working with the version for next year. Yay.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So you're a busy bee.
I am a busy bee. I do so much and I love every single thing I do.
There's nothing wrong with staying productive, that's for sure.
Right. Yes.
Well, in regards to our conversation, what would you want to leave to those who are looking to really getting into learning about themselves as whether they are sensitive, whether they're empathetic, uh, whether they just want to learn about how how today we kind of discussed the days of the week and how they correlate to the planets. That was pretty awesome. Uh,
Yes.
just as a whole, because I know we talked about a lot today. What positive message would you like to leave our listeners here today?
Aw, I'm gonna leave the listeners with this message that was a prompting from spirit, and it became one of the affirmations that I look at the most. It's not in my book yet because it'll be in the next one, but that is, you are doing work of universal proportions. Do not quit today.
I like that.
And that is
Universal.
really, yeah, and that is really meant to inspire you in terms of, we tend to think that a lot of the mundane little things we do day to day don't mean a thing. And if you're highly sensitive, you also want people to validate your efforts. You also want people to tap you in the back and say, you're doing a great job. Things that people in leadership positions get all the time, or celebrities get all the time. But who rallies for the little guy, right? Who even rallies for the hater? The hater has a wound that needs to be looked at, right? So the point is, when I received that download or inspiration, you're doing work of epic proportions, universal proportions. Don't give up. Don't quit today. Okay, fine. It's not the day to quit. I'm just going to keep going. And it's in those moments where you tap into hope and you just move forward, because it is all going to add up, and it is all so beautiful. So, if anything that I spoke about resonates, or if anybody has questions, I'm curious, before we go, we have a few minutes. David, when were you born?
Like what?
Just
Like the
just
month?
month and
May.
day.
May, and then the 11th.
So you're a Gemini, and you had a birthday last month. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And did you know you're a Gemini?
No,
Wait, no, you're Taurus.
a Taurus. I always knew I was a Taurus.
Yes, you're a
Unless it changed.
Taurus. No, you're a Taurus, and so am I. So this whole thing about the planets is it's really all correlated to the zodiac. And so if anybody listening has any questions about that, or would like to further know about themselves in that context, just follow me, book a call.
Yes.
I love my work, and I love connecting with people, so I'm excited. Thank you.
And of course, I will leave
All the links.
all the links in the description, and I'll make sure to share all this with you all. So thank you, Graciela, for your wonderful presence today.
Oh, thank you so much, David, for all of your hard work. I'm so proud of you, and can't wait to see where this takes us. So let me know where it's ready. Thank you all.
Definitely. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day. Stay safe.